like to call the Lee County Board of Commissioners back into order.
Move we come out of closed session.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we need a motion. No, for the contract. That's okay. That's fine.
I make a motion that we approve the county manager's contract that's been presented.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. You can tell we all need a little bit of a break. Okay, now I'd like to call the public hearing on the proposed fire tax rates for fiscal year 2015-16. To order, Donald Andrews, do you need to, would you like to speak before? No? Okay.
Not unless you need me to.
No? Okay, call the public hearing to order. Okay, all those speaking in favor of the proposed, fire district tax rates for fiscal year 2015-16, if anyone would like to speak in favor? I told you. You gotta come.
I've been trying to get them to come up and at least have someone to speak in favor of.
Yes, yes.
Either I'm too short or too tall, I'm not sure. Would like, on behalf of the Fire Advisory Board, like to speak in favor of the budget recommendations that we presented to the Lee County Board of Commissioners on June 1st. If memory serves me correct, 5 of the departments did not see a rate increase, and only Deep River and Carolina Trace saw, I think Deep Rivers was 7/10 and Carolina Trace was 0.5 cent. And we didn't speak on Clearwater, but there would be a 1/10 of a cent increase
Right.
there. We have the county has a contract with the city of Sanford to provide service, so that would go from 18.6 to 18.7.
Right, okay. Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against the proposed fire tax rate districts? Fire district tax rates, excuse me. Okay. Declare the public hearing closed. Okay, and now we will do the public hearing for the amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance for new land use and development regulations for commercial and residential solar collector facilities. Amy McNeil, hi.
Good evening, Commissioners and staff. On page 254 of your agenda, you have information regarding adding commercial solar collector facilities, commonly referred to as solar farms, and residential solar collectors to the list of permitted uses within the UDO. These proposed text amendments were originally presented to the Lee County Board of Commissioners during a public hearing held in November of 2014. Upon receiving a favorable recommendation from the Lee County Planning Board, the Commissioners voted to table these text amendments in December of 2014 and instructed staff to further research several items of concern and questions posed by various board members and citizens. Since several months have passed and the proposed design standards have been updated to address the concerns and questions posed, a new public hearing is being held at this time. Currently, solar collector facilities are included within a larger land use grouping and are approved as follows. They're permitted in the RA district as a special use granted by the Board of Adjustment, but with no specific design standards. They are permitted by right in the light industrial and heavy industrial districts, subject to the general development standards of the UDO as reviewed and approved by staff. And they are prohibited in all other zoning districts unless approved as a site plan specific conditional zoning district via the rezoning process, which must be voluntarily offered by the developer and reviewed and approved by the respective boards for the appropriate jurisdiction. As of June 2015, we have 2 solar collector facilities that have been approved within our collective jurisdictions. The Sanford Solar Project is a 12.5-acre facility located within Sanford's corporate limits in the corner of West Garden Street and Washington Avenue, which was approved via the conditional zoning process in 2013, but has not been developed. The Balsam, Elm, Sweet Gum, and Sanford 4 Solar Project is a 203-acre facility that is comprised of 4 individual solar farms located within Safford's corporate limits and the ETJ, southeast of the intersection of Fire Tower Road and West Garden Street. This project was also approved via the conditional zoning process, subject to the condition that the project must comply with any bonding requirements that the Safford City Council requires as per this solar collector facilities text amendment. Staff is currently working with a solar energy company regarding two potential sites. One is a 64 acres located within the jurisdiction of Lee County and zoned heavy industrial, and the other site is 49 acres located within the jurisdiction of the city of Sanford, and that one is zoned residential single family R20. Also, Central Electric Membership Corp is interested in developing a solar collector facility on the main office site at 128 Wilson Road. It is recommended that solar collector facility be added as a line item in table 4.6-1, the permitted use matrix, and be permitted as a special use granted by the Board of Adjustment for the appropriate jurisdiction with the specific development standards in all zoning districts, with the exception of the R6, R10, and central business districts, which are our most urban lots. This will allow solar collector facilities to be listed as an individual use with unique development standards. The subject property will then retain the existing zoning and yet allow the development of the solar farm on site, provided that the proposed design meets the acceptable criteria and is approved by the Board of Adjustment. For example, the area leased by a solar farm company on an agricultural farm zoned RA would still be zoned RA once the components of the solar farm were removed and the land was returned to farmland. This would allow the zoning to still be in harmony with the area and in conformance with the long-range land use plan, and the property owner would not have to bear the burden of rezoning the land back to RA once the solar farm ceased to function. Most solar farm developers and operators prefer to lease the land as opposed to purchasing it. A solar collection facility is an area of land developed with a solar energy system and includes the components and subsystems required to convert solar energy into electric or thermal energy suitable for use. It may be designed with solar arrays that are fixed or tracking systems. Fixed systems are mounted on stationary racks, and developers set the angle and orientation of the stationary system to maximize sun exposure through the day and the season, while balancing other factors such as density of rows, wind force, and visibility. Tracking systems are equipped with mechanical components, so the panels track the sun through the sky. This particular section shall apply to all uses of land that include the development of ground-mounted solar collection facilities, and does not include the installation of roof-mounted or building-integrated solar panels on a commercial or residential structure, which is allowed as a component of the structure and/or an accessory use. A solar collection facility legally established prior to the date of the effective date of this ordinance shall remain exempt from these standards. This ordinance does not supersede regulations from local, state, or federal agencies, including but not limited to any type of overlay district, glare hazard regulations, aviation notification, or military installation notification that may be required. A solar collection facility shall be required to conform to the following design standards, in addition to the general requirements of a special use permit application and any reasonable standards the Board of Adjustment may impose to ensure public health, safety, and general welfare. The information provided to the Board of Adjustment, along with the special use permit application, must address each of the design standards and explain how the proposed project complies with each standard. Number 1, the facility shall be designed to minimize the impacts of distribution and transmission lines on humans, livestock, wildlife habitats, natural resources, forest, and environmentally sensitive lands. Specific information shall be provided regarding how the development of the site in the manner proposed will not harm birds that may fly over or near the solar collection facility. Number 2, the minimum amount of acreage required is 5 acres. Number 3, the maximum allowed height for a solar facility is 20 feet, as measured from the finished grade at the base of the structure to its highest point. This excludes utility poles, wiring, and any antennas constructed for the project. Number 4, all structures and collectors must comply with a minimum 50-foot perimeter setback from all property lines, and with a 100-foot minimum setback from the right-of-way line of any public street. The facility equipment shall not impair site distance for safe access to and from the property or other properties in the vicinity. The minimum required setbacks to ground-mounted facility equipment shall exclude any security fencing, poles, and wires necessary to connect to the facilities of the electric utility. Number 5, a Type C 20-foot landscape buffer yard consisting only of evergreen trees that have a growth habit which will screen the development For example, holly trees with foliage that extends from the crown to close proximity to the ground and that reach a height comparable with the maximum height of the proposed solar arrays and/or fencing, whichever is taller, shall be installed around the perimeter of the facility. Small trees shall measure a minimum of 1.5 to 2 inches in caliber for single-stem trees, or 1 to 1.5 inches in caliber for multi-stem trees, and at least 6 to 8 feet in height at the time of planting. Large trees shall measure a minimum of 1.5 to 2 inches in caliber and 8 to 10 feet in height at the time of planting. The landscape buffer shall comply with Article 7 Landscaping and Buffering Standards and Appendix C, Acceptable Plant Species of the UDO, and shall be located outside of the fenced area. It's encouraged to use existing vegetation to comply with this requirement whenever possible, and the Board of Adjustment shall have the authority to approve the substitution of existing vegetation if it feels that the intent to minimize the visual impact of the facility is met, and if the developer or applicant proves to the board that the existing vegetation complies with the minimum size requirements. Number 6, the developer is responsible for maintaining the required landscaping and for maintaining, such as mowing, the 30-foot area between the 20-foot wide landscape buffer and the 50-foot setback from the property line or the 100-foot setback from the right-of-way line of the public street in a manner that is conducive to the surroundings. Number 7, the site must be secured by a fence along all exterior sides of the facility, at least 6 feet in height, with a gate and locking mechanism with 24/7 emergency access. The fencing shall consist of durable materials which shall be approved by the Board of Adjustment. The fencing must be located between the required landscaping and the structures in order to preserve the intent of the landscape buffer yard. Number 8, the drives and parking areas for vehicular traffic may be gravel. All parking and vehicular traffic surfaces shall be maintained in sound condition and free of weeds, dust, trash, and debris. All parking areas shall meet the minimum requirement of the applicable state and federal ADA accessibility codes. 9, signage shall comply with Article 11 sign regulations of the UDO with the exception of required security and safety signage. A warning sign concerning voltage must be placed at the main gate to include the name of the solar farm operator and a local phone number for the solar farm operator in case of an emergency. 10, all power transmission lines from the facility shall be located underground to the extent practical, excluding existing utilities. 11, the electrical disconnect switch shall be clearly identified and unobstructed at all times. The owner must file a map with the Lee County Office of Emergency Services and other appropriate parties based on the jurisdiction, depicting where the disconnect switch is located, and supply all emergency contact information to emergency personnel to have on file. 12, if lighting is provided on site, it shall be shielded and downcast such that the light does not spill into the adjacent parcel or the night sky. Motion sensor control is preferred. 13, the developer shall be responsible for managing stormwater on site. 14, the maximum allowed impervious surface for facility in a residential zoning district is 70%. The maximum allowed impervious surface for a facility in a commercial zoning district shall correspond with the maximum allowed impervious surface ratio within the UDO. 15, if an erosion sedimentation control plan is required by DENR for any land disturbing activity, a copy of the approval letter shall be provided to staff prior to the zoning approval being issued. 16, if a driveway permit is required by NCDOT, a copy of the approval letter shall be provided to staff prior to the zoning approval being issued. 17, the facility shall be designed and sited so that glare does not create a distraction, nuisance, or hazard to traffic, air travel, motorists, etc., adjacent properties, and neighbors. Anti-reflective coatings are required. 18, the facility shall be designed and sited to reduce or eliminate any noise associated with its use. 19, the facility shall be designed and sited to reduce or eliminate traffic levels associated with its use. 20, the facility shall be designed and sited so as to require minimal site maintenance. 21, all site improvements such as landscaping, fencing, etc., must be maintained in good conditions until the facility is dismantled and removed from site. 22, solar components must have a UL listing or a listing from an alternative testing agency accepted by the local jurisdiction having authority over the project. 23, all construction shall comply with all building and electrical codes. 24, all construction parking must be located outside of the rights-of-way of public streets. And 25, the applicant must provide written authorization from the local utility company acknowledging and approving connection to the local utility company's grid. In the event a solar collector facility becomes abandoned, the applicant must provide a way of ensuring the remaining solar infrastructure does not create a hazard to the public. A decommissioning plan provides an overview of all the activities that will occur during the removal of the facility, as well as all activities related to the restoration of the land and water and management of excess materials and waste. It will typically include the disconnection of the facility from the electrical grid and the removal of all facility components, including the ground-mounted solar panels with any racking and supports, inverter units, substation, transformers, and other electrical equipment, access roads, underground cable, communication tower, perimeter fence, and any concrete foundations. A decommissioning plan signed by the party responsible for decommissioning and the landowner shall be provided to staff as part of the special use permit application. After approval of the special use permit by the Board of Adjustment, the applicant must provide the planning department with a certified cost estimate and a performance guarantee for decommissioning. The performance guarantee must be in the form of a surety or performance bond, and the amount must be 1 1/4 times the estimated decommissioning costs minus the salvageable value, or $50,000, whichever is greater. The full amount of bond must remain in force and effect until the solar collector facility is decommissioned and any necessary restoration site complete. The landowner or tenant must notify the planning department when the site is abandoned and when the site is properly restored as per the approved decommissioning plan, and the performance guarantee shall be released by staff once the site is properly restored as per the approved decommissioning plan and inspected by staff. That's a very specific financial guarantee bonding requirement, and that was a concern to everyone. We can get that specific, or I found some general language in another ordinance that I'd like to share with you as an option. The owner shall provide financial security in form and amount acceptable to the county or municipality to secure the expense of dismantling and removing said structures. That's a very general statement. It meets the same intent, but it's really up to you how specific you want to get. If you want to leave it up to each jurisdiction to decide what performance financial guarantee mechanism should be in place, or if you want to be very specific and adopt what I've drafted in the ordinance. Just an option I want to provide to you. Alright, we also have a second option for commercial solar facilities. This particular option was not drafted by staff, but it was drafted by Mr. Keith Clark. He's a concerned citizen that I worked with on this text amendment to address some of his issues that he had at the original public hearing. As directed by the Lee County Board of Commissioners, staff met with Mr. Clark on several occasions to discuss this proposed text amendment. Mr. Clark has concerns regarding the long-range land use and public policy implications of solar collector facilities on Lee County, and would therefore like for the boards to consider a tax-based protection alternative land use matrix for commercial solar farms. Special use permits would be applicable only in the RA, LI, and HI zoning districts, and this alternative proposal would permit the governing bodies to consider any solar collection facility on a case-by-case basis through the rezoning process. Such consideration would allow the boards to weigh the short and long-term impact of zoning classifications with a higher potential for development that provides more taxable income and more jobs than solar farms. Mr. Clark feels that this decision should be a policy decision on a case-by-case basis until our long-range plan, the Sanford Lee County 2020 Land Use Plan, can be updated. Please be aware that we cannot legally require conditional zoning within the UDO land use matrix. Therefore, a developer would have to offer to rezone the land within a zoning district where the use is not permitted to a site plan specific conditional zoning district, and would create his or her own conditions and site design standards as part of the rezoning request. The information submitted as part of the revised rezoning request is legally binding on the land. Therefore, the site would have to be developed as per the plans and conditions proposed if it were approved, even if a property transfer were to take place. Once the components of the solar farm were removed, the site would need to be rezoned in order for the site to be redeveloped or returned to farmland. And that's option number 2 for the text amendment for commercial solar collector facilities. That option 2 was drafted by Mr. Keith Clark.
Did the staff take a position on this option?
In summary, regarding commercial solar facilities, there are 3 options. You may choose to leave the language within the UDO as is. You may choose to go with option 1 as drafted by staff and make this a special use permit in all zoning districts except the R6, R10, and central business districts. Or you may choose to go with option 2 as drafted by Mr. Keith Clark and make this use a special use permit in the RA, LI, and HI zoning districts and not permitted in all other zoning districts. I drafted the initial option, making a special use permit in all districts except R6, R10, and Central Business District. So I would have to say, based on my research, in my opinion, that is the best option.
Okay.
There may be more people in the audience that have information to share regarding this use, but prior to moving to a public hearing on this matter, we need to review the proposed text amendment regarding residential solar collectors, since the text amendments were grouped together. It's recommended that residential solar collector be added to the permitted use matrix and permitted by right in the RA and RA districts, subject to supplemental design standards. A residential solar collector is an area of land developed with ground-mounted solar collection panels that gather solar radiation as a substitute for traditional energy for water heating, active space heating and cooling, passive heating, or generating electricity for residential property. This section shall apply to uses of land that include the development of ground-mounted residential solar collectors and does not include the installation of roof-mounted or building-integrated solar panels on a residential structure, which is allowed as a component of the structure. A residential solar collector shall be required to conform to the following design standards. It shall be designed to minimize the impacts and distribution of transmission lines on humans, livestock, wildlife habitats, natural resources, forest, and environmentally sensitive lands. It shall serve residential development located on the same tract of land as the system only. The ground-mounted solar panels must comply with the building setbacks for an accessory use in the zoning district. The ground-mounted solar panels must be located as close to the ground as practical and shall be a maximum of 20 feet in height, and it shall be designed and sited so the glare does not create a distraction, nuisance, or hazard to traffic. Also, anti-reflective coatings are required. Are there any questions before you open the public hearing?
Any feedback? Walk me through again the $50,000
Sure.
or greater versus what your alternative was,
Absolutely.
please, ma'am.
One of the main concerns at the initial public hearing from all jurisdictions was the fact that there was not a performance guarantee required. So in the event that this developer goes belly up, we were kind of left holding the bag. We currently require performance or financial guarantees for telecommunication towers and for subdivisions that have been approved on paper, but the infrastructure has not yet been installed. This performance guarantee for this one would be in the form of a performance or surety bond that renews automatically. The amount would be 1.25 times the estimated decommissioning costs minus the salvageable value, because metals have a high salvageable rate these days, or $50,000, whichever is greater. Estimates for the decommissioning of the site and salvage shall be determined by a North Carolina licensed professional engineer or contractor, and a bond certificate must be submitted to the planning department each year verifying the bond has been properly renewed. The full amount of the bond must remain in full force and effect until the solar collector facility is decommissioned and any necessary site restoration completed. So basically, before they can develop that site, they would have to provide us with a performance bond that every year we receive a verification of bond in force from their bonding company that it is still in effect for the estimated decommissioning cost minus the salvageable value, or $50,000, whichever is greater. That's a very specific requirement and something we're proposing. Or the owner shall provide financial security in the form and amount acceptable to the county or city to secure the expense of dismantling and removing said structures. The second one is very general and just allows you flexibility in case each jurisdiction was, perhaps you guys weren't comfortable with a performance bond. Maybe you're comfortable with a letter of credit being extended from a bank, something to that effect. One's a very general sentence and the other is much more specific. On the one hand, the specific one does let the developer know exactly what's required, where the other one is open-ended, but it could work to their advantage either way.
It could also work to the county's advantage because $50,000 might not be enough.
Well, it's 1.25 times the estimated decommissioning cost minus the salvageable value,
okay.
value,
I'm
or
sorry.
50,000, whichever is greater. You're always going to get the 50,000.
Right, okay. Any questions? Thank you.
That was a lot of work.
It was, and thank you very much. It was a lot of work, and I appreciate your efforts. I know it well, yeah. Okay, so I'd like to, open the public hearing, on the amendment. I guess I did that already. So anybody that would like to speak in favor of the Unified Development Ordinance for new land use and development regulations for commercial and residential solar collector facilities. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Commissioners, staff.
Sorry, name and address.
My name is Jerry, Gerry, Dudzik, D as in David, U, D as in David, Z-I-K. And my company address or my home? 139 Kingston Drive, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. 27514.
Public records.
Right here.
Welcome to Lee County.
Thank you. I'm a solar developer, and I'd like to speak about the text amendment as I've reviewed it and give you some perspective from the developer's point of view. My company is Carolina Solar Energy. We're headquartered out of Durham. We focus, and our business model is commercial utility-tied solar farms, and we do not do residential. So that's where we're coming from. We formed our company in 2004. We built the first utility-scale grid-tied system in the Southeast. We partnered with North Carolina State University, and it's still sitting out on the campus. That said, we produced and developed probably close to 150 megawatts since we started operating. And we have a number of solar farms that are in various stages of development. And we work all across the state from the west to the east, to the north, to the south, Piedmont area as well, and are focused totally on North Carolina. So that's our market. In reviewing the text amendment, I'd like to just comment on some key points that planning has already reviewed in detail. I think, from my professional point of view, the commercial solar text amendment is both comprehensive and rigorous. And we've seen all kinds of permitting requirements and standards, and varies, as you all know, county to county, city to city, ETJ to ETJ. You have captured, and your department has captured, really kind of the best practices. And just highlighting a few of them from a developer's point of view. The very first portion of the write-up, referring to the special use permit, allowing the landowner to keep the original zoning through the life cycle of the system. As you all know, the systems typically have, by any developer standard, a 30-year life cycle. The modules are warranted for 25 years. Typically, the land leases that are being offered are 20-year leases with 2 5-year extensions. So after 30 years, a decommissioning would take place. The racking would be pulled up. It's pressed into the ground. It's not in concrete footings. The panels would be removed. The conduit underground would be pulled up and retrenched, and you plant grass and return the property to its original condition. Allowing the landowner to maintain the original zoning and not having to go through the burden of rezoning is a very, very beneficial component of the special use permit, and it gives certainty to the both developer and the landowner. I'm just going to jump down to a few other highlights, if you all don't mind. The buffer, number 5, type C 20-foot wide landscape buffer, that's a very robust visual buffer design. That's and getting down to the actual heights and the diameters of the various types of vegetation that would be allowed is incredibly definitive. From our point of view, I would see that as a positive. It gives, again, the developer the ability to know exactly what they're going to be held required going in, and it sets an expectation that everybody can live with. So there are no surprises 2 years down the road. The plants aren't growing, they're failing, the landowners that are adjacent to it are upset. You can avoid all of that. Number 6, again, is clear ongoing maintenance language as far as the developer owning the responsibility for maintaining the required landscaping and the area between the road and itself. It's good for everybody to know that going in, plan for that. The rest of the requirements are usually practices that my company and most North Carolina commercial developers are already practicing. So I just think it's just a very good collection of information. The decommissioning and abandonment plan, we're all doing that now as well. We, from our point of view, would, my company's perspective, if it's a surety bond, that's totally manageable and within our scope. If a line of credit, a letter of credit, was required, certainly we could go that route as well. But here again, knowing what that number is and having a certified PE, civil engineer or engineering company produce the decommissioning plan keeps everybody informed and you know what your targets are going in. So just to kind of summarize, I think what you have before you and what I've been reviewing is a clear and concise roadmap. It's a roadmap for the developer to follow, and it really covers from the beginning of construction all the way through the life cycle of the system through the decommissioning. And everyone knows what their responsibilities are, what the standards would be, and what the expectations are going to be set at walking into it. As far as how solar farms fit into your long-use land plan and the planning that the department's going to be doing for use and development of available acreage in Lee County, as you all know, solar farm site selection is what we would call substation centric. The solar farm is going to need to be within 2 miles, at a maximum 3 miles of the substation that's going to be serving it. Primarily in Lee County, you're looking at legacy CP&L substations, Duke Energy Progress as it's now called, and you all have 4 of those. So you would have, going in, as you look at your long-range plan, you would know that the developers are going to be making site selections within a circle, a radius of 2 to 3 miles around those 4 substations. And then you're going to be eliminating land that is in a floodplain, has jurisdictional blue line ditches, a number of different reasons that would make it not applicable, have to be adjacent to the 3-phase line and the rest. If you kind of hold that thought, then you'll see that your universe of available acreage really gets to be minimal. And that's the case in any of the counties. The reason why you have this 2 to 3 mile radius is because any distance outside of that, the cost to upgrade the 3-phase distribution line, the feeder line to tie into the substation becomes exponentially more expensive. It's not linear. So it's not another mile is another $50,000. It starts multiplying, and it gets to a point very quickly, 4 miles out, you can't finance the project. The numbers just won't pencil. So it really is self-limiting. That's the only places they're going to be able to be built. So all in all, I would applaud the work that's been done. We would very much embrace something like this because it's just a plan that everybody can work towards, and they would know what the expectations are going in, which often when there's been a problem, it's been because of misunderstandings. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else care to speak for? Anyone to speak against? Okay. This public hearing is closed. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. There's a lot of hard work.
Very good job.
I know way more after this agenda than I did about solar farms before. And thank you for coming from out of town to give us your
My pleasure.
perspective, very much.
We have a map of the 4 substations.
No, but when he mentioned that would be something that, Mr. Kavaskas could do for us.
I
That
actually
would.
have,
Oh, do you?
if you're interested.
Awesome. She's so
We
prepared.
can put it on our website.
Yeah, that would be great.
Would you like me to give it to Danielle
Yeah,
now?
that would, or you can now or give it to her later, whichever is more convenient.
Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
You probably need to rest some. You've been up there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a break.
We need to-
I think their planning board's going to the
Yes.
back.
Before this review board goes back, I want to take this personal privilege to thank this board, but also say to Reverend Morrison, I don't think they've been before this board since his son passed, and I want to let you know that we are still praying for you, and certainly you have our condolences, and if you need us, we're here for you.
Thank you.
Wanted to give you those.
Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for all your hard work. We do appreciate it. Okay. Last item. Under other business, we've got the approval of fiscal year 2015-16 fire district budget ordinance. John, it's got your name.
I know it says my name, but.
I think it's
yeah,
self-explanatory.
I am not gonna read this ordinance.
You sure?
I am positive.
Okay.
But,
All right.
I'm sure Mayor Andrews will be happy to answer any questions that are in it. And we take his numbers and just plug them in, so, into the ordinance, and it's pretty standard from what we approve year to year, so be happy to try to answer any questions or volunteer Lisa Mister to answer any questions.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions of Mr. Andrews? Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
We accept the proposed fire district budget ordinance.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for your hard work. And all the fire departments, hope that they stay safe and as cool as possible. They've been working awfully hard. Gonna ask, Dr. Connect wants to say one thing?
Yeah, I'd like to bring up the ordinance issue that we had talked about last time. In terms of allowing somebody to live on their home as their home is being built.
Somebody in the county
Right,
outside
the
of.
RV.
Thank you, in the unincorporated areas.
Right.
I think there was talk about waiting for the, joint, what was it,
The
Yes, sir.
interlocal.
I had Carrie review this today to make sure it was correct, but, under the Unified Development Ordinance, we have agreed by passing the ordinance that we will allow the Joint Planning Commission to, make a recommendation to us on any text amendment to the UDO. So if you wanted to change that provision, I talked to Commissioner Reeves about this today, you still have to go through a text amendment to change that provision. So in the meantime, I've gone ahead and asked them to go ahead and put this on the Joint Planning Board meeting. The Joint Planning Board meeting will be
The 23rd
the 23rd
at 6.
at 6 o'clock. And then we will have a public hearing on that text amendment on July 13th. And that will make us compliant with our own code.
And Marshall has already sent out 4 options as far as 2 options as to what we could amend the Unified Development Ordinance to make it amenable to allow a person to do that for a time period or so. Is that what
Is
Well,
that,
the main thing was we had this discussion with them already, right? Then they came up with recommendations. So why do we have to go back again for second recommendations?
Well, because the recommendation that came before the board that was tabled was to not allow it. Now you're gonna go back and ask for different recommendations that would allow it to occur. So you're asking for something
unreasonable.
completely different than what came before the board
So after the
before.
public hearing, then what?
then
I believe you can approve
you
it.
can vote on it.
You can
And then
vote
it
on
goes into
it.
effect.
On the same evening,
Yes,
And then it goes into effect, whatever we choose to do as a board?
July
depending on the
13th.
way it's worded, what we can put that, the July 13th date.
I believe, yes.
Mhm.
You're fine.
Is that okay?
Because it doesn't have to go to this board, because it went to the joint planning board instead. But
Red tape.
we agreed to this by being members of the joint planning board. And I think Mr. Reeves would like to talk about.
We didn't know what we agreed to.
No, right? Mr. Reeves would like to talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't know what we really agreed to, because the situations are different for us in the unincorporated areas versus city limits. So we need to have some options available to us as a board to act in the best interest of the community. And this way just keeps adding more time. It's another red tape thing that government,
It's bureaucracy.
right?
Do you want the staff to work on rewording?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But then, yeah,
Right.
Well, it doesn't change what we're doing here, but for the
No.
future, I think Mr. Reeves has come across something that's kind of hitched us a little bit, and he'd like to unhitch us a little bit.
I think we have to have a little more flexibility than we currently
I
have.
agree.
And, time is money.
Time is money, yes, sir. We don't need a motion for that, do we?
I've already said
No, we've already.
it's in motion,
And
it's
Marshall's
moving
working on it.
forward. And,
Excellent.
I am learning more about our UDO every day.
The 23rd will be an interesting meeting.
I can just add workforce development to that.
Yes, sir. My list of things to do just keeps.
The
getting
Workforce Development Board meeting has a conflict with this joint planning board meeting, so I'll be at the joint planning board meeting, not the Workforce Development Board meeting. But I will be at the August Workforce Development meeting.
And I would expect them to give you a review of what they covered in that meeting.
I think they understand that we want more information.
Commissioner Smith, did you have anything you wanted to add? We kinda did our commissioner comments before our closed session because we had a little buffer there. Okay. All right, I need a motion, gentlemen.
Move to approve.
Move to approve? How about adjourn? Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, y'all be safe. Try to stay cool out there, please.